Chapter 8. Gray Day. Sky waved to the two women as they walked toward what the Coles liked to call their driveway. It was really little more than a grassy path. She turned to Jessie and said, "What do you think about that?" She picked up a wet shirt and smoothed it over the clothesline. Jessie made a face. "It's about time, is what I say." He forced a clothespin over a bunched-up shirt on the line. Sky frowned and started to say something to him but stopped herself. In the big scheme of things, it wasn't important. The clothes would dry either way, and it was his shirt. When he decided he didn't like wrinkled clothing, he would stop doing it. She sighed over Jessie's frustration. They were all on edge and would be until this trial was over and done with. Yes, well, it took a while for the judge to get here, but it'll be over soon enough. "He ain't here yet," Jessie said, his disbelief that the magistrate was actually coming written all over his face. "He's slower than snail mail used to be." "It's a slow process, but really, Jessie, this is faster than trials used to take place." "Man, I can't see how it could be." Sky chuckled. The boy became more like Dylan every day, and while some days she wondered if she could handle two of them, most of the time, she was happy for it. Jessie darted a look at Sky. "If he is on his way, then we need to get over to that jail." "I know, Jessie. I'm still getting used to the idea." Just the mention of it made her tense. "I'm trying." "Stop worrying. I'll be fine." "I hope so, but I'm not just worried about you. I've barely gotten a handle on my anxiety. I need to prepare myself." Jessie's face fell. "Oh. I hadn't thought about that." He glanced at her. "You don't have to go if it's too much. I'm your mother now." "I'm going." Sky yanked a pair of pants out of the laundry basket and jammed the clothespins on them. "We'll go in the morning if that's good with Dylan and Wade." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Sky ran a hand over Jessie's thick hair. "If you need this, I'm sure." She nodded toward her disappearing friends. "If they're right, the trial date will be set soon, so we better get to it." Jessie nodded, a serious expression covering his face until he heard a cow mooing. Then he giggled. Yesterday, the Cole brothers, along with a few other men, spent most of the day hauling the sick to the containment center and bringing the healthy cattle to the community. Now 6 beef cows were penned up down the mountain in quarantine. Their occasional low bellows reminding everyone that if everything went well, beef might soon be on the menu. Dylan turned his head toward the noise and smiled. Sky knew he was eager for a big steak. He walked over to the two of them and grabbed Jessie by the shoulders, playfully shaking him a couple of times. "You ready for some foraging?" Jessie's face lit up. "Yep." Sky scoffed. He was always ready to explore, and if it got him out of laundry duty, then that would be all the better. But his hopes were dashed when Dylan picked up a wet t-shirt and started hanging clothes alongside them. Dylan gave Sky a long look from the side of his eye before asking, "Are you coming today too?" "Of course, I always go with you." "Well, almost always." "Okay. Just checking," Dylan said. Sky took in how uncomfortable he seemed. He was tense as he fumbled with the clothespins. Their argument had really thrown him. "It's okay, Dylan, people disagree, and they are totally fine afterward." Dylan grunted as if unconvinced. When she continued to look at him, he shrugged and went back to the clothes. His behavior confused her. They'd had arguments before. Since he wouldn't explain, she could only suppose that now they were together, he didn't know how to act since the problem was still unresolved. Discord was always a problem for Dylan. In a lot of cases, he could just walk away. But he couldn't do that with her anymore. Sky smiled at him again, then reached up and put a hand to his cheek. "It's okay. Jessie and I decided to go to the jail in the morning if that is good with you and Wade." His tight shoulders lowered as some of the tension left them. "Yeah. That'll be good. You ready for that?" Sky glanced at Jessie. "I will be." The next morning was as gray as Sky felt. As they made their way down the mountain in the big black truck, her eyes were glued to the passing forest as she tried to forget what they were about to do. It was bad enough she had to face these men in a courtroom. If not for Jessie, she would never have willingly seen them any more than she needed to. When Dylan reached for her hand, she startled but wrapped hers into his large one. Nothing bad could happen to her. Those evil men were behind bars, and her protectors would be there. She sent her boyfriend a tiny, forced smile. When they pulled into the station's parking lot, Sky felt her stomach jolt. She'd been trembling for the last 10 minutes at least and had tightened her grip on Dylan to try to hide it. Everything in her told her to run the other way. But she was a mother now. She had to do what was best for her child, and this is what he thought he needed. Dylan shoved the truck into park and sat back, looking at her. Jessie might not fully understand how hard this was for her, but he wasn't fooling him. Sky pulled in a slow breath and let it out, but it didn't slow her thumping heart. She couldn't sit here. Better to get it over with. Grabbing the door handle, she jerked it open and hopped out of the vehicle. She was halfway to the door before the others caught up. "Slow down, Mom." "No. You keep up. Let's get this over with." Jessie didn't reply. He just followed her through the main areas of the station and toward the jail. Tom was there. It shouldn't have surprised her, but it did. It gave her a little more comfort that her cousin would be there for them. He gave her one look and buzzed open the locked door leading to the cells. She strode into the room and stopped. The dreary place was even more depressing than the day. She stepped back, leaning against the gray cement walls as she stared at the three men. Each one had their own barred room. Bleach was the overpowering smell, but sweat also drifted to her. Her gaze lingered on a sweaty Tony. She didn't want to know what he'd been up to. Dylan moved to her, but she patted him and stepped toward Jessie. She was glad to have the backup, but this was something they needed to do on their own. Calvin, Tony, and Pete stared at them, surprised. They hadn't known of this visit ahead of time. It would have given Calvin time to think, and his mouth worked well enough on the fly. Sky slipped her hand into wide-eyed Jessie's, standing as close to him as possible. They could say whatever they wanted to her, but if they said one hurtful word to her son, she would pull him out of the room as quickly as she could. The automatic door slammed shut and clicked. Sky and Jessie jumped.